7:03. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Amy Woods, the Executive Director of Alumni Relations at Marist and a graduate from the class of 1997. We're very excited to present this webinar to you tonight featuring Marist alumna Amanda Augustine. And to begin tonight's presentation and to introduce Amanda, we have Alumni Executive Board member Julie Lavin from the class of 2009. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical notes. If you encounter any audio issues, you do have the option to dial in by telephone. I provided that number and the code in the chat box. Due to the number of participants, we have muted all lines except for the presenters. We are going to reserve the chat option for any technical questions you have or general questions for the Marist staff. Please do not send any private messages to Amanda or Julie because it's very difficult for them to see them come in while they're presenting. So please use the Q&A feature for any questions that you might have for Amanda or Julie. And they should be sent directly to the host, myself or Donna Thellman, and we'll get them to Amanda and Julie. There are several ways which you can view this presentation on your screen. You can hover over the top right corner of the video portion of your screen with your mouse, and some small icons should appear. The preferred choice for a webinar like this is the active speaker video view. There'll be a brief survey on your screen at the conclusion of the webinar with 5 questions. If you have a minute, we would really appreciate your feedback. As you might imagine, we've had to bring everything online with Marist alumni. So we want to know how we're doing, and what we can do better. So we would really appreciate that. So now I'd like to hand it over to Julie Lavin. Julie is president of the Long Island chapter of the Marist Alumni Association.
Thanks so much, Amy. I'm so happy to be here tonight with you all. Amanda Augustine graduated Marist summa cum laude in 2004 with a degree in business administration and marketing. In 2014, she received the 2014 Marist College Young Alumna Award. Amanda is nationally renowned expert in career advancement, ranging from developing one's professional brand to acing that next interview. As a certified professional career coach and a certified professional resume writer, she has spent the past 15 years helping professionals improve their careers and find the right job sooner. In 2015, Amanda became the resident career expert for Talent Inc.'s suite of brands. That's TOPRESU, Top Interview, and Top CV. Prior to that, Amanda spent a decade working at the Ladders, where she honed in on her job search and career guidance expertise. She currently lives in Long Island, New York, with her husband, son, and their golden retriever. Amanda, thank you so much in advance for spending the time with us all this evening and for sharing your expertise.
Oh, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad you could join us today. I'm going to be doing a little sharing of our presentation, but you're also going to get to see me while we're doing this. I know this is such a popular topic right now, and so my goal is really to provide some practical, tactical advice to help you strategize, both for the short term as well as the long term. In addition, I'm trying to leave a good amount of time so that we can do a lot of Q&A. So definitely, you have a question, post it in the Q&A section, and I'm going to try to get to as many as I can before our time is up. So without further ado, let me share my screen with you. Dun, 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 dun. All right, and let's go to presenter mode. Why, hello. I like to start every presentation with a hello. I think it's just something you should do. All right, as Julie mentioned, I am the career expert for Talent Inc.'s suite of services. I provided the 2 brands that I thought would be most appropriate for this group, both TOPRESU and Top Interview, which focus more on searching for work and securing that job offer within the United States. That said, Top CV covers anything if you are looking for a role outside the United States in a country where they require a CV as opposed to a resume. I did want to give you the links for both career advice blogs, because that's a really great resource. Everything I'm going to touch upon, I can guarantee there's an in-depth article that either I've penned or one of my colleagues has penned on the topic. So if there's something that's of interest to you and you want to dig deeper and we don't get to it here, I highly suggest hitting up both of those sites for the free advice. I'm going to skip over this because we already talked about it, but this is the company. And one thing I did want to mention, it's something that we have going on right now, and I'm so excited to be able to offer it to everybody here, but TOPRESU normally does a free resume makeover contest once every other month or something like that. But due to what's going on all around us, we've decided to up the ante. And so we are picking a new winner every week for a 6-week period. We picked the first winner this past Friday, a woman named Rhonda. She's having her resume made over for free. And then we're picking the second of 6 winners this coming Friday. So you definitely have time to get in there and enter the contest. When you enter, you will also receive a free review of your existing resume. So some Okay, so this is a question that I've been hearing over and over and over again. I've been doing live chats every Tuesday afternoon for the past few weeks and hoping to continue that. But even when I'm just talking to friends and family, I always get pulled aside virtually and ask, is it really possible? Is it possible to change jobs? And I highlighted change jobs for a couple reasons, because that could mean finding a job now when you're unemployed. It could be that you're in a current job, but you had intentions to change jobs and now COVID happened and now what do I do? It could be that you lost your job due to COVID. It could be that you were considering a complete career change when everything occurred. All of this is kind of encapsulated in this question. Is it really possible to do any of those things in 2020, given what's going on with this global pandemic? And I have to say the answer is actually yes. So it is a positive message, but I'm going to put the caveat on there that you'll need to be strategic. If it helps to hear, I know for a fact I've had 2 colleagues, one whose husband landed a job 2 weeks ago and the other whose boyfriend landed a job last week. Both of them, their entire sourcing interview process, everything has been done remotely, and they both landed full-time permanent positions. So it is possible to land short-term stuff for now, but it is also possible to land that permanent full-time role, but you are going to need to be strategic. And obviously some industries have been affected more adversely than others due to the pandemic. So what I'm hoping to share with you today is an overview of what a strong job search strategy looks like, and then pull out certain pieces that either are changing because of what's going on, or there's some extra things you should consider given what's going on in the current climate. Sound good? All right, let's move on. If you've attended any webinar that I've ever done that's been on the job search, chances are you have seen some variation of this chart. It's one of my favorites. It breaks down the job search in a really manageable, digestible kind of 3-step process. If you are in marketing and sales, you're in luck, because honestly, the job search process is basically a sales funnel. You're identifying your target audience, you're building your advertising campaign and marketing to them. You are actively seeking out leads in the search process, and then you're closing the deal. That's the job search. And given this crazy environment that we're in right now, none of this has changed. If you look at each part of the job search process, nothing's going away. Some things may be slightly altered, or how you approach them might be different, but you're still going to go through all of these steps as you're searching for a new job. And so what I'd really like to focus on today is something from the prep phase, something from the search phase, and something from the close phase. My goal is to try and get this done within the first 35, 40 minutes so that we have time to really delve into more questions. If I can go faster, I truly will. But again, if anybody has ever had one of these presentations with me, you know that succinct is not necessarily my strongest suit. So let's delve in and talk about what's going on when it comes to your job goals and then go into your resume. When I talk about job goals, it is a little different right now because you really have to ask yourself, am I looking for the right job or am I looking for the job for right now? And there is a difference between the two. It's going to come down to a variety of factors, but keep in mind the job for right now is more of a short-term plan. How am I going to pay the bills now? How am I going to make sure that I can pay my rent, that I'm comfortable or at least not really, really tight on cash? This is often involves temporary or contract work, something that's outside your field or your chosen career path. It could be a strictly remote opportunity that would have always been remote, regardless of what's going on in the world. It could be that you're now looking at side gigs. And I always put hobbies down here because there are a lot of people who had a hobby where they were kind of making a little money, or maybe they hadn't monetized it in the past. And now they're re-examining that to see, well, could I squeeze some money out of that? Could that help, pad the bank account a little bit so I'm not as concerned? These are all things to keep in mind. And then the right job, that long-term planning where you're looking for more of a permanent and full-time role, assuming that's your long-term plan. Not everybody has that as a long-term plan, but more often than not, something that's in your chosen career path, or it's an intentional career change. You're not forced to change careers because of what's going on, but you've wanted to change careers. I also think it's interesting that I've spoken with a lot of people, given what's been going on, even if they're gainfully employed at the moment, they're not necessarily happy with how their company handled what happened. They weren't happy with how they were treated or how things were communicated. And it's been that extra little push to get them thinking about, well, where do I really want to work? What do I really want to do? Do I truly, oh, look at that light on me, guys. Is it truly, let's see. Oh, well, I may take a break in a moment and close the blind so you're not staring at lines on my face the entire time. But really, are you, is this what you truly want to do? Or is the silver lining to this entire shelter at home that you have a little bit more time while you're working at a laptop to think about, what do I truly want to do next? Because one of the great things I think about the modern job market, the modern career path, is that you can have multiple chapters in that career. It's not you have one linear path and you get your gold watch at the end of it and retire. That's most definitely not the norm these days. It's the exception to the rule. And also we're seeing a lot of people pursuing what's known as a portfolio career, where you may be juggling more than one type of career at once. You may have the side gig that you're actively doing, as well as 2 part-time jobs, so that you're finding fulfillment in multiple facets of your work. It's a trend, and it's not just with the younger job seekers. We've actually done some research on it, and we're seeing a lot of those who maybe were thinking about retirement but are not quite ready are looking for something like that as well. So it's something where perhaps what you love to do is never going to be enough to pay the bills, but you can do some of that on the side and take on the other work that's going to help handle the majority of your finances. We're seeing a lot more of that these days. And in this crazy environment we're dealing with, it actually, I don't want to say it's easier, but it's more the norm. It's not unusual to see people going after some contract work as well as something that's their existing career path. I'm going to quickly hop up and close my blinds so you all aren't staring at lines on my face. So I'll be right back. I'll give you some music. All right, 1 blind, 2 blinds.
There we go.
We are definitely going to talk about this when we talk about virtual interviewing.
Julie could
Now do a test run at the exact same time of day, and it bit me. So here we go. For those of you who are looking for the job right now, and I know there are some people out there that are most certainly are in that boat, here's how you're going to decide if you truly need to go short-term planning. It's going to depend on your finances. It's going to depend on your industry, and it's going to depend on your location, because all of those will signal whether it's feasible for you to hold out and only pursue a longer term strategy, or do you need to muscle up and find something in the short term. One thing I do want to point out though, and be very clear about, you may be looking for the job right now. That does not mean you shouldn't be prepping for the right job. I think, in the end of 2018, Randstad US did a study and found that the average job search within the United States typically takes around 5 months. I want to say it was 5 months and 2 weeks or something like that, or 2.5 weeks, something like that. Can we expect the job search to take longer given what's going on? Absolutely. Now, if you are seeking a job with a company that right now is ramping up their hiring to meet COVID specific demands, those will actually probably be accelerated. But more often than not, they're not long-term, permanent, full-time positions. That's more of the short-term or part-time work that they need now to handle the demand that's going on. It's something to keep in mind. But I definitely think you can still plan for the career change. You still can plan for the job change. You can still plan to find the right job for a long-term career path, even while you're searching simultaneously for something to hold you over. Now, these are some resources, and I'm going to share some links a little later on. Probably when we get into Q&A, I'll throw them up in the chat as well. I have an article that my colleague wrote that I love, because she really went and dug and found all these really cool resources that are not your typical. It's not just the job boards that everyone knows about. These were different ones that are very specific, and a lot of them are helping with today's crisis. They were actually built for this reason. So a couple resources that I wanted to point out. Torch Capital is actually a VC firm. And if you go to their site, and again, I will share the link to the article on TOPRESU that goes into all of these and has all the hyperlinks. They have something that they call the community sourced spreadsheet, where it's a Google spreadsheet, and people have been adding to it and providing every resource under the sun, every company they know that's hiring, everyone's adding information. Now, anything that's crowdsourced or community sourced, take it with a grain of salt. You're going to have to verify the information, of course. It changes quickly. It's not official. It did not come from the company, but it doesn't mean that it's not a valuable resource. So I highly recommend checking that out. Upstream was a new one for me. It's known as an app-based community platform. And again, it's a place where people are letting you know, my company's hiring. We just did this. So again, it's people telling you what's going on. And similarly, stillhiring.io. And if you just put that in your browser window, it will pull up the website. It's just www.stillhiring.io. Same thing. All these different sources are all providing information based on people who genuinely want to help and share what's going on. I just saw that TikTok is hiring a bunch of people. Facebook is hiring a bunch of people. So I'd like to point out that these resources are for right now, but they're also for beyond. A lot of these are not restricted to just part-time or temporary work. In fact, the majority of the resources on this page are also for full-time permanent positions. So definitely something to keep in mind. I found Ryan Robinson's article. He has an article called Ryan Robinson's Remote Job Websites Collection. And I'm sure I'm going to get this number wrong, but I think it's something like 60 to 80 different websites he's collected, where these are all job websites that are either solely dedicated to publishing remote job opportunities, or they have a dedicated portion of their site that posts those types of opportunities. And it's not what you think. It's not just those short-term or temp work. There's plenty of jobs where people are working remotely. Frankly, everyone's working remotely, or most people are working remotely. So it's very interesting to see what's popping up on there. I highly recommend checking it out. I have no affiliation with this person, but I found this gem and I was so excited about it that we added it to the article that we put on Top Resume because I thought it was so powerful. This last one, modern day jobs, I would definitely put this in the category of the resources for right now. This is how can you get scrappy? What are some interesting, unusual, I think they posted 100 different ways you can make money off the internet. And some of them are outlandish, some of them are selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace and stuff like that. But there's other ones that are genuinely interesting and worth checking out, especially if you find yourself in that category where you need a short-term fix as you're planning for a longer-term job search. How are we doing so far? Anything specific, Julie, that people have asked about that you think that's relevant to what we, in terms of resources or job goals?
No, I think it's perfect. You're right on par with actually even a couple of questions that's come up. So continue. It's all good.
All right. Thanks, guys. We're like this. We're like this. Okay. Okay. So I want to get into resume and cover letter. Obviously, one of my favorite things since I am a resume writer and I do a lot of these. And I've been looking at a lot of friends and family members lately, wouldn't you know? I wanted to specifically talk about writing a resume for remote work, since whether you're short-term or even long-term, every job is remote right now. So being able to demonstrate some of this, even if your ultimate goal isn't a fully remote work or remote position, I think this is still interesting to keep in mind. I also recommend this for anybody who's looking for that short-term opportunity right now. So many of them are telecommuting opportunities, and so it's important to keep these things in mind. So first of all, if you've previously telecommuted or you traveled extensively for work, if you were a road warrior and you were more often or not in a hotel or on the road as opposed to in the corporate headquarters, you fall into this bucket as well. You want to emphasize that experience. You can do it in a number of different places on your resume. You can pick and choose where you want to do it. It's honestly going to depend on what makes the most sense and where does it truly apply for you. So in your job title, you can put in parentheses next to that virtual or telecommuting position to point blank, just put it out there. For location, if you worked remotely for part of the time or that sort of thing, you could put the city and state where you were going into the headquarters, but then after it also put virtual or traveled X percentage of the year or something along those lines, so they're aware. In terms of your role and responsibilities, you can also work some of that language in there. So maybe you don't want to put next to location how much you are traveling. It might make more sense to incorporate that into your role and responsibility. Responsible for doing X, Y, and Z while traveling 75% of the calendar year, something along those lines. And then the bonus is if you can incorporate it into your achievements. If you brought in a project on time, under budget, ahead of schedule, anything that you did that you would have bragged about on your regular resume, based on my roles and responsibility, this is the output, this is the value I provided to the company, these are the goals that were set for me that I achieved or beat. You can just work in there, as part of a 4-person remote team, as part of a virtual team. Anything like that, you can just incorporate it in, or while traveling 75% of the year, whatever it is, you can work some of that information in there, and it's going to make it very clear to the reader that you've got this. They don't have to worry about you. The second thing you can do is highlight the skills that we know employers look for in remote workers, and those fall into 2 buckets. There's the hard skills, which is more of the technical skills. The tools you know how to use, whether it's online collaboration tools, project management tools, web conferencing, video conferencing, anything like that. If you possess those skills or you are comfortable in using those tools, you can create a technical skills section at the bottom of your resume. And list those there. If you are a, if you work in IT, you're probably going to have a tech section where at the top of your resume that's showing all of your specific, the languages you can code in and those sorts of things. This is a little different. This I'd throw at the bottom of your resume. Probably in your education and professional development section, you can have a section for technical skills or technical tools in there. The softer skills, again, are those kind of fluffy marketing words, but the best telecommuters are very disciplined, they're very organized, they have great time management skills, they're tech savvy, they're self-motivated, and they're very comfortable using electronic communication. Now, some of this you can definitely work into your resume. You can place it into that professional summary at the top, work some of that in there. But if you're going to mention it, you have to back it up within your work experience or education sections. So how have you used your self-discipline or motivation or your organization skills? How have you used your tech savviness in order to produce results? One thing I found is that for so many of us, if you do still have a job, you were forced to work remote, whether it's something you were accustomed to doing or not. Think of all the new resume boosters you can put on to your resume now. Think about, did you have to take a process that was always face-to-face and suddenly create an online version of it? Did you have to, move your onboarding process to a virtual environment? Did you have to move whatever you had to do to suddenly adjust, particularly if you're managing a team or a project or a process? Oh my goodness, those are winners. Put those into your resume. You can also highlight some of that on your cover letter as well. And I think for some of the softer skills, you can work some of that into your cover letter as well, where you can mention, your comfort level with using electronic communication, such as Slack and video chat and whatever it is. You can drop some of that in there as well if it doesn't really feel like there's a good fit within your resume. And then I always say, show that you're set up for success, and I do mean that quite literally. I do not expect you to put this on your resume. I think it would be silly to put it on your resume, but in your cover letter, you could throw in a line that says, I have a dedicated workspace, I have fast and reliable internet, and I have, a new laptop model, a new PC model. I'm fully equipped and ready to work from home. I'm looking forward to discussing further with you your needs and how I could provide value to your organization. It could be a good way to kind of summarize just at the very end. You only need a line. This should not be the headliner in your cover letter by any stretch of the imagination. But all of these things will help position you for those remote opportunities. And if any of these little things apply, especially if you have previous experience telecommuting or traveling extensively, incorporate that into your resume, regardless of if you're looking for remote work, because the reality is most positions are remote at the moment. Whether they're going to remain that way or not, of course, is a bigger question. All right, I want to throw out this bonus tip because this is important for everyone, no matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're looking for the long-term role, the short-term role, if you're going to change careers, or if you're staying in the same area. I would say for a lot of people, if you're suddenly looking for that short-term role, your resume is going to go over is going to need some overhauling, because it's probably set up and targeted towards a different goal. So whenever you're about to start a search, you always have to take a step back and say, okay, well, what's my goal now? Based on what I found online, the inventory I've done of my skill sets and my strengths, the knowledge that I possess, where can I leverage my skill set? And if it isn't a new and different way than what I'm accustomed to doing, my resume is going to need some editing. So always reevaluate your resume with the lens of your new job objective. You may need to reframe your experience. And what I mean by that is that details that were not deemed important before may now be added in and highlighted because they're relevant given your new job goal. Information that was incredibly important in your old resume may no longer hold that much value, and you may omit it or downplay it or spend less time talking about it on your new resume. You always want to pull out the job listing before you submit that resume and look at it and say, okay, well, what are they emphasizing? What terms keep routinely popping up in this resume? What experience or job listing? What experience are they looking for? What skill sets do they want me to possess? And then how can I read between the lines and say, okay, so ultimately, what are they looking for this person to do? What's the problem they're trying to solve? Now, how can I take this and look at my resume, and how can I clean up, reword things so that I am demonstrating that I have the qualifications they're looking for? I may be qualified for a lot more. I might be qualified for a lot of very different roles, but today my resume needs to reflect that I am qualified for the role that I'm pursuing today. So keep that in mind. And if you're going for a longer term role as well, you're probably going to have a different version of your resume if the goal is very different. When I talk about optimizing for keywords, this is incredibly important because for two reasons. Normally, the first two entities that are going to review your resume are gatekeepers, for lack of a better term. There's an electronic one known as an applicant tracking system. This is a piece of recruitment software that is used to scan your resume, parse the information, and basically determine if you are not qualified for the role. Applicant tracking systems tend to be better at eliminating what it deems to be the least qualified, as opposed to identifying the best matches for the role. So your job is to make sure that you're putting in the keywords that you're seeing in this job description. If they describe a skill and you possess it, take that language as you see it and make sure you work it into your resume. If there's a requirement for a certain skill, a knowledge level, a tool that you need to use, you want to take that information as it appears in that job description and somehow work it into your resume. I do not believe in throwing a bunch of words at the bottom of your resume in white font to try and trick the system. Frankly, it just really angers the recruiters. Particularly if you don't possess those skills, then you shouldn't be putting it on your resume. If you do, you need to get creative and find a way to work them in. So keep in mind, optimizing your resume with keywords is really important for that electronic gatekeeper, but it's actually also really important for that initial reviewer. Oftentimes, a large organization will have somebody who's known as a sourcer, and their job is based on a set of criteria they've been given from the higher ups. They're reviewing this resume to determine, do they meet the qualifications? And it's a quick look. On average, less than 10 seconds. They're spending quickly scanning your resume, assuming it passed through the ATS, to determine if you're worth passing on to their boss or to the hiring manager. So something to keep in mind. I also say when you're tailoring your resume to leverage your network. Why? Because if you can get any inside information on what this company looks for, what they prioritize, what's not written in the job description that you should know about, it can help you have an edge on other candidates. So you definitely want, before you hit submit, you always want to check your network, check for, fellow alum, check for people you've worked with in the past. I mean, hit up an advanced search on LinkedIn and look for first and second connections for people who currently or previously worked at that organization and see what pops up, because you do want to talk to people and just get a better sense of, hey, I'm looking at this opportunity. I want to submit my application, but before I do, I just wanted to talk about your experience at that company, whether it's they currently work there or they previously worked there. Why did you join? What was your experience like? What could you tell me about the company that I'm not going to find on that website? Anything like that can also help you further tailor your cover letter, as well as tweak that resume so that you're speaking in a tone that mimics what you're seeing on their brand, because you want to appear as though you're a good fit, not just on paper, but also from a cultural perspective. All right, sound good? We're all great. Let's move on. There was something, yeah, I'll get to that in a second. I already mentioned this, but when you're writing your resume, you're writing it for two audiences, at least audiences, both the software as well as the human being. And I always emphasize this. I actually did a talk on this earlier today. So if you go to TOPRESU's Facebook page, you'll find my latest live video there, where all I did was talk about tips on how do you craft a resume that will beat the hiring bots. Because on average, 75% of online applications never make it past that system. They fall into the discarded pile and a human never reviews them. So it is really important. Yes, most Fortune 500 companies use the software, but also companies of varying sizes are leveraging various forms of applicant tracking systems. So it's not just the big companies, you're finding it kind of everywhere these days. And then I already talked about this, but less than 10 seconds.
Amanda, it's Amy. Question. One person asked, is there anywhere they can see an actual example of a resume specifically for remote work? Do you have anywhere you can point them to, even if we post it later?
Yes. Yes, I think we have one on our website. If you, I think so. It's honestly, it's not, even if there's not one there, the article that we wrote on it, and I think I wrote one for AARP, and then another colleague wrote one for TOPRESU, but in it we give sample blurbs on how could you phrase this. And so I think that's even more important than looking at the resume, because we have lots of resume samples and you can definitely look at those. I can send you the link for, I don't want to go out of this because then everyone's going to watch me search my site. But
when you're done.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. This study was really interesting, and I know it always shocks everyone. I used to work at Ladders. At the time, it was called the Ladders. Now they're Ladders. In 2012, they ran their first eye tracking study, and we weren't really, this wasn't what we were looking for. We were looking for other things. We wanted to see how recruiters scan a resume. What do they focus on? What do they kind of dwell on? You know, where does their gaze stop? That sort of thing. Are there formats that work better based on how recruiters are accustomed to reviewing resumes? All that fun stuff. And we learned lots of interesting information, but the big kicker is that we asked them all up front, on average, how long do you spend reviewing a resume? And most said at least a minute, some said up to 5 minutes. And when we did the study, they were spending 6.2 seconds reviewing a resume. In 2018, they repeated the study because obviously 2012 was a long time ago and we wanted to see if things changed. They changed, it went from 6.2 seconds to 7.4 seconds. So the moral of the story is the initial glance is short. If you make it past that initial glance and you get into the review further, thanks but no thanks, you're going to get more time dedicated to someone reviewing your resume, right? But you have to get past that 10-second scan or that less than 10-second scan. So we always talk about how resume writing has become part art and part science, because you're trying to craft it to get past the bots, but you also need to make it easy for a person to consume and quickly pick out your relevant qualifications in that quick glance so that you make it to a further examination. Now, someone had asked about if you're searching for work and you're over 50. I do have a really great article on that. I wrote a version of it for AARP and we republished it and expanded upon it on TOPRESU. That's literally called How to Age Proof Your Resume. There are certain things to keep in mind. Silly little things. Instead of putting 2 spaces after your punctuation, do 1, because it actually is a tip off as to when you learned how to type and what were you learning on a typewriter where you had to put 2 spaces because they're mono spacing. I don't remember the right word for that. You know, focus on the most recent 10 to 15 years. You can have a note or a very small section that kind of gives a little background on earlier experience, but frankly, employers care more about what have you done recently and how does that relate to the opportunities that they're trying to fill today. That's incredibly important. Whether we like it or not, they're going to assume that you're not as tech savvy, and so you want to give them every opportunity to bash that stereotype. So again, build up your technical skills section. What different types of tools are you using? What is most relevant to your industry today? And if it's not something that you feel very comfortable with, or it wasn't something you had to use in your current or most recent job, this is a really great time to take advantage of all those free online courses that people are doing. You can even, if it's a particular type of software, you can even, see if you can get a demo from the company. There's a lot of salespeople who are giving demos. You might be able to sign up and just go to one of those. They'll do an open session so you can get a feel for the technology so that you can feel comfortable with it. It's whatever you can do to demonstrate that you still have your pulse on what's going on, and to really focus on what have you done most recently, not necessarily what you did, 16 plus years ago. That's a short summary, but I have a really great article. I actually did pull it up ahead of time, so I have a browser open underneath this one with a few links that I'm gonna just go do and hit up at the end of the presentation that I think will be interesting for some folks. Last thing I want to talk about when it comes to resumes is keep in mind, you want to get into the mindset that your resume is a marketing document, something that you're carefully curating. You get to determine what information you place in there and what you omit. I'm not talking about lying. I'm talking about you decide what you want to highlight and what you want to omit if it's not relevant and not painting you in a positive light. Keep in mind, it's a marketing document, not a transcript. It's not a transcript of your work experience or your education. So you want to go back to the job description and always highlight the most relevant details on your resume. Emphasize those more. Make them obvious to the reader when they're doing that quick scan. When it comes to the design of your resume, less is more, and I can't emphasize this enough. When people start getting too creative with their resume design, you have to keep in mind, more often than not, these resumes are being passed through a piece of technology. If you get a little too creative with your formatting, it's not going to register well with the system. Also, recruiters are accustomed to looking for certain pieces of information in certain spots. Getting creative and throwing it in a random spot may seem great because you're catching their attention, but frankly, when each job listing gets an average of 250 applications, and I would have to assume that number has increased since the pandemic has hit and unemployment has skyrocketed. I can assume that they're not going to spend any time hunting for any information. It's either they can see it, they can review it, or it's going to get put to the side. So something to keep in mind. For those who come from more creative fields, save the creativity for your personal website or your online portfolio. Make sure you're linking to that within your resume, but keep in mind that it's more important to show off your creativity there and keep your resume in a more traditional format that you know is going to fare well when it's going up against that 10-second check with a recruiter and that piece of software. I've already said this, but I will say it 7 million more times. Customize each application based on the job listing. And I do have some really great articles about this. If you go to the live chat that I did today on TOPRESU, in the comments section, my colleague was popping in all the URLs to all the articles that I mentioned. There's a really good one there about customizing. And then I always say, do your homework and turn to your network. Doing your homework is getting a better feel for the company, what they value, what they profess they value, what's the culture like, because that will help you determine how creative you can get with the language on your resume, how more outside the box you can go based on what's the company like. Are they using cartoon figures for all of their executives' headshots? Or is it a very, black and white photos and very traditional? Those are all hints. Look at their social media accounts, talk to people in your network who've worked for those organizations, get a feel for how much of your personality you can express in your application. Just where can you draw that line? Because we have done research that shows that recruiters would prefer to see more personality in the resume. However, there is a line and it's hard to draw. Okay, moving on because I know I'm running out of time. Networking, a lot of people asked about this. I always throw this number up there because you are 10 times more likely to land a job when your application is accompanied by an employee referral. You're looking for advocates. So yes, networking is so incredibly important. I think it takes a greater precedence now because you're up against so much more competition for those job listings if they're published online. And traditionally, 50% of the available open opportunities are never published online. So you won't find out about those opportunities unless you're talking to people who work in the industry or at the companies that are really interesting to you. Now, luckily, all the things that I would suggest doing when we could go outside and be closer than 6 feet with one another, you can accomplish at home. Most of it. Again, yes, I get it. There's a caveat. There's definitely a big asterisk here, but you can most certainly evaluate and invest in your existing network. You can participate in relevant events. They're just virtual. You can research and approach new contacts, and you can set up informational interviews. And informational interviews are one of my favorite things, whether you're looking for a career change, you're about to graduate, or everything's turned upside down and you're just trying to figure out what's going on and where there are opportunities available. Informational interviews are when you set up a meeting with somebody who works in an industry, field, or at a company that's of interest to you, and you are interviewing them. 10-minute phone call, 10-minute video chat. It's short. You're seeking information from them to get a better feel for what's it like working at that company, how does this industry operate, and if you're looking to make a change, how could you translate your experience into terms that this new field would appreciate and understand. So how do you do that from home? Here are some of the tools you'll need. LinkedIn is a big one because it will help you evaluate your existing network as well as identify new potential people to reach out to. When in doubt, an advanced search on LinkedIn looking for second and or third connections that work at a company you're interested in, an industry that you really want to break into, or complete career change. I often, if you're looking to make a career change, I like to actually run an advanced search for people who previously worked at my company or a competitor of my company. So I know they worked in my industry and now have gone on to something differently. You got to review a lot of profiles, but you'll start finding people who have made a change either in industry or in role. And those are people to really reach out to, particularly if they're first or second connections, or you have some sort of connection with them. So say, they also attended Marist. Or they're also there's something that you have in common by looking at their profile. Those are people to reach out to and say, I saw that you did this, I'm really interested in doing something similar, I'd love to get 10 minutes of your time. They don't even have to leave their house now. I will say, when it comes to networking, people fall into two buckets right now. They either have a lot of extra time on their hands or they have no time available whatsoever. If they've suddenly become daycare provider, homeschool teacher, as well as trying to, handle a full-time job, yeah, those people, you're going to have some difficulties. That's when you want to reach probably out to closer contacts. Start with people that can then introduce you to other people. These are the ones that's like, hey, so FaceTime, 8 p.m., glass of wine, what do you say? You got to be a little creative, but you're trying to identify who falls into what buckets and work with what you've got. Work with close contacts who will give you a yes or no and be honest with you, it's a numbers game. Reach out to lots of people and eventually someone will reach back out to you. I put Alumni Fire on here. It's a cool resource where it's set up for people who either went to the same school, are in the same sorority or fraternity, high school, college, whatever it is. You can find groups of people that all have that in common, who have actively said, I am looking for help or I am willing to help. So it's a group that's already said they're in that mindset. I cannot emphasize enough that if you're really stuck and you say, well, I don't know anybody who's doing what I want to do or at the company I want to do, look for people who graduated from Marist. Alumni Fire did a study that found that 90% of hiring managers would prefer to hire a fellow alum if given the opportunity, but they're very rarely given that opportunity. So work that network. You have a bond, use it. The two tools that I put next, 10 Times and Eventbrite, both post virtual events. 10 Times is a great resource. regardless, but they have a section. If you go to their site, and I think it's /online or /virtual, something like that, you can access all of their online events. Eventbrite, you can also search for just online events. The next are all different ways that you can, besides a phone, have an informational interview, reach back out, reconnect with someone you know. Yes, I know that some people are apprehensive of reaching out given this time because, oh, it's clear that I'm just looking for help. You know what? Everyone wants to help in some form. I think we're seeing more people wanting to help in more ways. How many feel-good stories have you seen and read lately? The worst that can happen is they can say, I'm sorry, I can't help you right now. The one thing I'd emphasize is don't ever reach out to somebody and say, I'm looking for work, can you help? That's not the approach, because more often than not, they can't satisfy that need or help you accomplish that goal. But if you approach it as, I'm considering working for this organization, or I'm thinking of switching to this industry, or based on what's going on, it looks like I'm going to be pursuing more of this line of work. Do you know anybody who works in that field that could maybe give me a better background on it? I'm just looking to get a better sense of if this is realistic for me. So go down that route where it's more of, I'm fact finding, I'm using this as an information gathering session. People are much more willing to give you that time if they don't think that they're going to be put on the spot and asked to help you find a job, because that's a much harder ask. And then the other things, your resume and LinkedIn profile, obviously you want to have them handy whenever you're having these conversations. Always have an objective in mind. What are you trying to accomplish with each conversation? Is it an introduction? Is it a list of publications you should be reading? Is it a great resource online? Whatever it is, have a specific objective. It should never be to get a job. It's everything that it's the tools that will help you land that job. And prepare a list of questions. And I have some really great articles on informational interviews that have a list of questions you can use. This is just, take a screenshot of this if you want. I think this will be available later, but these are all potential subject lines you could be using when you're reaching out through a LinkedIn in-mail or a regular email when you're reaching out to someone that you don't know well. Whether you're being introduced to this person or a friend said, hey, you should talk to them, or it's someone you discovered on your own. These are all ways that you can kind of go about that information. Again, it's all looking for advice. It says nothing about particularly getting a job. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on interviewing, but I just want to point out, please don't be this guy. Please don't be this guy. This went live today. I think it's fantastic. This happens all the time. You know, I mean, I'm guilty of it. I've definitely worn pajama bottoms, you know, while I'm doing a live chat, and then sat there and said, oh God, how is the angle of my camera? Could they see it? Because guaranteed you say, oh, but I'm never going to stand up. What did I have to do? I had to go close the blinds. And everyone would have seen if I was wearing my spandex yoga pants. So definitely something to keep in mind. Just dress the full way. Just do it. It takes what, an extra minute. High level. I mean, I don't think anything here is, you know, revolutionary. Nothing new over here. I think everybody should common sense know these details, but it doesn't hurt to be reminded. You need to find a quiet, well-lit space, or just a quiet space if it's a phone interview. Honestly, closets are sometimes the best places because the clothes serve as kind of insulation from the outside noises. And as long as it's not a video conference where you need really great light, that works rather well. I highly suggest investing in some set of headphones, something that has a microphone attached. I use AirPods. My husband is anti-Apple, and he uses something else he found on Amazon. They don't have to be expensive. I think he refuses to spend more than $30 on any headset, and he's found really good ones that are noise canceling. So there are deals out there. I do not endorse or represent any brands, but keep in mind, it really does help. And if you're going to be doing a lot of video calls, if you're going to be doing a lot of phone calls, it just makes sense. You do have to get creative. I wish I could show you right now, but my laptop is propped up on two things of Tupperware that are holding my kid's clothes that he's outgrown. and a photo album to get to the proper height so that it would be a good angle. You don't want someone looking up your nose or at your double chins or staring down and seeing your lovely roots, given the fact that we can't go to get our hair colored. Really keep that in mind. Also, practice with someone you trust, whether that's a friend, a service like Top Interview, where we do mock interviews that are all through video, or you can do phone if that's what you choose. But you really do want to test out the lighting, the positioning of the camera, and the volume, and make sure that your internet connection is strong enough, because that can really distract from a solid interview if you're worrying about all those other things, or your lighting's awful, or they can't hear you very well. So just take away the distraction so that the focus is on you and your qualifications. I just wanted, before we jump into the other Q&A, I did want to remind everyone, if you haven't already, definitely enter the contest. We're picking 5 more winners. Winner number 2 out of 6 is going to be picked this Friday. So all you need to do is go to topresume.com/resume makeover and submit your resume. You'll get a free review out of it, but we're also picking 5 more names, including the one this coming Friday. And then if you are not tired of me yet and you want to talk more job search geek speak with me, every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I am on Top Resume's Facebook page doing a live chat. I try and focus it on a topic, but again, I will answer any and all job search questions, regardless of if it's on topic or not. I talk for normally an hour and 15 to try and address everything. And this URL down here will take you to all of our previous videos if you want to look at any of those, such as the one I did today on, how to beat the hiring bots, how to write your resume with the applicant tracking system in mind. So without further ado, I'm sure we're tight on time. I can definitely stay a little later depending on how the ladies are, how everyone else is doing, but give me some questions.
Amy, before we jump into any, are there anything that popped up that we didn't address?
There are some that came in tonight. I know we had some sent in advance as well. So Amanda, if you're willing to stay on for a little bit, we do have some questions, and Julie too. Yep. I know I popped in for that one specific one because you were talking about resumes. So that was a question about how to alter it for remote work. And then something else in the resume section was, is it better to show skills at the top or bottom of a resume? And I don't know if you said that.
That's a great question. It depends on what skills. So your typical resume, and again, we have plenty of samples for career changer, entry level, mid-level, senior executive level. It's all within our blog. If you go, you can search for resume sample and it will pull up those specific articles that have the samples within them. High level, normally you have your contact information at the top, a professional title that's clearly showing the reader the type of role you're targeting, a 3 to 5 line professional summary. Think of it as the elevator pitch of your resume. It's summarizing your relevant skill sets, qualifications, and how you've leveraged these things to provide value to previous employers. What has the output been like? So it's kind of whetting their appetite and setting the stage for the rest of the resume. Directly under that professional summary, which again, 3 to 5 lines, could be in paragraph form, could be bulleted. There's typically a section known as areas of expertise or key skills. And that's the section where you can do a really good job of kind of incorporating a lot of those keywords that you're finding in the job description. So perhaps it's search engine optimization with SEO in parentheses, brand marketing, copywriting and copy editing, program and project management, team leadership. It's the stuff that high level summarizes, this is who I am and these are the skills that I'm expecting to leverage in my next role. So again, the list could be very long, but you're going to tailor it down to what is most relevant to the types of roles that you're applying for now. You could put some of those softer skill ones in there as well, like the organization and discipline. You could put them in there. I would try not to, but that is an option. Then at the bottom of your resume, which is typically the bottom of the first page or the bottom of the second, depending on how long your resume is, there's a section for technical skills, and that's more of the platforms you're accustomed to using, the project management tools. For instance, if you're a writer, it's probably going to have the blogs you're accustomed to using. If you're in the world where you're using social media, it would be the platforms you use to manage all of those streams, as well as the particular, social media accounts you use. It could be proprietary tools that your company uses to do something, and you can actually say like proprietary POS scaling, whatever it is, something along those lines. The only exception to this rule is, well, there's two exceptions. One, if you're fresh out of school, you may not have a ton of areas of expertise or key skills. I actually sometimes change that section to, with exposure and knowledge of, and use it that way to get in the keywords. And it's more about what have they been exposed to and they feel comfortable, learning more about. But if they don't have a ton, you might incorporate those technical skills in with that top section. Also, if you are in IT, you will have a section dedicated towards the top of your resume before you get to the work experience that has your technical skills. So, and when I say technical skills, we're talking about computer languages, that you're able to code in, those sorts of things. And so that would be that one exception. Then you go into work experience, then you go into education and professional development and, community service or things along those lines.
This one might be an easy answer for you. When applying to jobs, should they submit a cover letter even if the company doesn't ask for it?
Yes, I say yes because there have been a lot of studies. Fully admit there are recruiters out there that say, I never read them. However, there are also recruiters out there that say, yes, I always read them. And there's really no way for you to know. So you're better off covering your basis and supplying one. But just make sure it's not generic. You want to customize it to the role you're applying for and to the organization. And also, it's a great opportunity for you to explain what you can't easily explain away on a resume. Why did you have? Well, I took some time off to raise my children and here's how I've kept my skills up. Or I'm specifically targeting these types of roles because I'm very interested in X, Y, and Z. It's also an opportunity to demonstrate more of your cultural fit with the organization in ways that you can't express in your resume as easily.
Amanda, with
I want to add to that also, as having read, a lot of resumes, you mentioned using your Marist connection. So as an example, that's somewhere you might put that you found out about this job through a Marist grad who works at your company. And I'm a Marist
100%.
grad, something like 100%. That, right? To pull in the Marist connection.
Yeah, 100%.
Sorry, Julie, were you saying something?
Sorry, what I was going to say is, Amanda, there was one of the questions, and you touched upon, obviously, a lot of stuff broadly, but with the increased competition right now and looking for a job, are there any other recommendations besides the quick tips and bonus tips you gave us to uniquely position yourself with that resume cover letter with people with similar backgrounds, just because there's such an increased pool of people now?
Yeah, that's a really great question. One, the more you can leverage your network, the better, because if you can bypass any of those things that have been put in place to, basically whittle down the list of potential applicants, right. 100% you want to leverage those. Look for the advocates in your network, both the social butterflies, also known as power connectors. Power connectors, I think that's what they're called. Malcolm Gladwell, I think, calls them power connectors. You're looking for the people who run in a lot of different circles and are able to introduce you, leverage those people. In terms of the resume, the best resumes do three things, and TOPRESU did a study on this, and it's the three things that are not just obvious little fixes. Obviously, you can make sure that your resume has, a professional email address and is grammatically correct and typo free and all that sort of stuff. Avoid the things that recruiters just hate. But the three things that typically make a resume stand out. One, you tell a compelling career narrative. Again, think of it as a marketing document. And wouldn't you know, storytelling is such a buzzword in the marketing community. Your resume should tell a story. That's why you have that professional summary. That's why you leverage the cover letter. You are trying to explain to people how all these various experiences that you've had in your personal and professional life have led you to possess this set of skills and be interested in this type of role to make you a good fit, as well as interested in this type of opportunity, which has to do with the skills you'll be leveraging, the experience you've gained, as well as the company culture, the mission, the industry, all those sorts of things. You want to tell that compelling career narrative. And I have a really great article on this. It's kind of what recruiters want and how your DIY resume may be falling short. It's an expansion of these 3 points. So number 1, tell a compelling career story. Number 2, create visual balance on your resume. And I'm sure most people don't think about that, but when recruiters and employers are reviewing resume upon resume, they don't want something where you try to squeeze it onto one page so the font size is so small and there's no margin and they have to squint. They're not going to read it. You don't want your work experience to be these dense paragraphs, nor do you want it to be an endless list of bullets, because both of those will make your eyes glaze over. You're trying to figure out, how do you leverage simple design techniques to draw the reader's eye to the most important information? Where are you bolding certain pieces of information? Unless you're brand new to the workforce, I always recommend, when you're describing a previous job that you have, or your current job, that you have a short paragraph, short, 3 to 5 lines, that's summarizing your role and responsibilities. And then you save the bullet points and consider them bragging points. What are the most important pieces of information that you want them to know about you? How did you provide value? What output did you create? What were the results? What were the fruits of your labor? If you don't have a role where there's lots of, quantifiable accomplishments and that sort of thing, leverage the bullet points to describe what didn't happen if you weren't at that job. If you took a week off of work, what balls fell? What dropped because you weren't there to take care of it? How can you leverage those bullet points to demonstrate that you're good at what you do? That's more what it comes down to. And we talk a lot about having an achiever resume versus a doer resume. Even if you have, quote unquote, a doer job, the bullet points are supposed to demonstrate, how can you prove that you're good at what you do? Did you get the best shifts? Were you asked to help train newcomers to the team? Did you get the Employee of the Month award? Whatever it is, those are the things you're trying to demonstrate to prove that, hey, I'm good at what I do. That's why you want to hire me. I went off on a tangent and now I'm trying to remember where we were going with that question.
No, it's okay. You got it. You got it.
Oh, but standing out. Sorry. So that was number 2, is that visual balance. Use the bullet points to draw your eye in. Don't pack the information in. There was a really great study done maybe a year and a half ago by another company, where they looked at, thousands of resumes, and they had hundreds of recruiters looking in, and they found that recruiters preferred a 2-page resume 2.3 times over a 1-page resume. Yeah. You don't have to relegate yourself to a page, even if you're entry level. Now, what I got from that is that if you don't have enough information to truly warrant a 2nd page, don't try and stretch it and add fluff. That's not going to work in your favor. But if you were truly active in school, you did co-ops and internships, you were involved in a lot of activities, if you truly have enough information that's worth going to a 2nd page, you no longer have to feel restricted to one where you're sitting there playing Sophie's Choice with the different words. And the third is prove your value, frankly. And I already touched upon that, but it's, how can you demonstrate not just that you possess skills, how can you provide proof points for the skills you possess? So how have you leveraged those skills to offer value, to provide contributions to your organization? And whenever possible, if you can quantify that information, all the better. That's why I always suggest everyone should have a brag book where they're sitting recording. When did they get a promotion? What goals were handed to them? Did they beat them, meet them, exceed them? You always want to keep a record of that information, so you have it at your fingertips when you go to either negotiate better terms with your employer or update your resume.
Great. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if what you just said, if there's something you could go further with. We have, as you saw in the registration report, folks from all different eras, right, on the webinar tonight. So we've gotten the question from someone who said, how can someone over 50 improve their job search? But then we've also got a bunch of 19 grads on, and even soon to be 20 grads on. who are saying, what's your advice for them since they don't have a lot of professional experience, maybe some internships, that's it. You know, how can they approach the job market? So we have two spectrums here. And I don't know how it's easy for you to answer that one.
Sure. So we touched a little bit on the over 50 already. I would look for resources that are specific to that group. So, you know, I'll fully admit we're partnered with them. So that's why it's the first one that comes to my mind. But AARP has actually really expanded all of their career resources. And it's definitely, you wouldn't think of it, but yeah, there's definitely a need there. And so they've done a lot of work on expanding both the services as well as the guidance that they provide. So don't be afraid to check that out. When you're evaluating your network, because I find that when I'm speaking with those that are over 50, a lot of them say, yeah, well, everyone's retiring. They're not useful anymore. Well, who have you managed and mentored over the years? Those people are valuable too now because they'll have a pulse on what's going on. And oftentimes, if you are in one of those more senior professional roles, or that was your you know, that sort of stuff, consider consulting, consider contract work, even if it's a short-term fix. Because, and there are websites also dedicated to interim positions for executive level. Keep that in mind. If you Google interim executive job listings or interim executive recruiters, you will actually find resources dedicated where you can find short-term things. I mean, my company's using one. We have an interim CFO right now. There's definitely those opportunities out there. It's a foot in the door, which could lead to something more. And then the other thing I'd highly recommend is just age-proofing that resume. I touched on a couple of those tips, but again, if you Google top resume, age-proof your resume, the article will pop up. A version of it, a little bit shorter, is also on AARP, but that goes, I mean, I think there's 10 to 13 different tips on there for different ways you can kind of tweak and play with your resume. Don't be afraid to leverage that network. For those that are recently graduated or about to graduate, one thing to keep in mind, I know you don't want to hear this, but there are paid internships available that are virtual because everything's virtual right now. And that can be performed after graduation, I think up to at least a year after graduation. I know that I hired two ladies, both who had recently graduated. They came on as interns, and then both of them have other pursuits that they're doing. So they've both remained part-timers, but we moved them to, you know, regular employees and not interns, and you know, adjusted the pay accordingly and those sorts of things. You know, and that was great for them because it gave them some more experience, especially if you weren't active and didn't have a lot of internships during school. As well as helping them explore other opportunities. So don't be afraid to look at internships. Keep in mind, you're trying to get your foot in the door, and it's a really complicated job market right now. So don't be afraid to just try something that gets you, even if it's a customer service job, if it's getting you into a company that really interests you, if it's getting you into an industry that you're really drawn to. This is the foot in the door, and just think of it as a stepping stone, not the ultimate destination. That's what I find both with those that have recently graduated and those that are trying to make major career changes. You're looking for a bridge with the skills that you currently possess. You may have to take one or two or more stepping stone roles to help you build the skill set and relevant knowledge and experience to get you to the next role, to get you to the ultimate role.
Right.
So that's really important to keep in mind. In terms of resources, I mean, there's so many out there. There's one called Rookie Career. There's the Muse is really good. I have a whole list dedicated to more of those entry-level positions. But again, don't be afraid to look for a virtual or a remote position. I know it's not ideal when you're first out of school, but that's the reality that we live in right now. And so it's better to get something that you can kind of get your feet wet and you can learn, and then you can reevaluate things in a few months and see where you stand. Even if you accept a job that's holding you over now, it doesn't mean it's forever, and it doesn't mean that you have to stop job seeking. You can still continue to look for opportunities. You can still continue to network. Worst comes to worst, you have to leave a job after a very short tenure. While not ideal, it's not the end of the world. You know, I'd love to say there's so much loyalty with companies and employees these days, but you do have to look out for you. You just want to be very gracious and respectful and try and give as much notice as possible. If you do, you know, end up having to leave a job that you started not too long ago. I think everyone has a bit of understanding right now because it's just a really crazy environment.
Just based on that, of everything that's going on right now, is throw one more in there. It was sent in advance. We know a lot of companies are on hiring freezes right now.
Yeah.
So folks are applying to companies that may be in that situation. How long do you think it will take before they respond to their applicants?
Oh. Well, unfortunately, the reality is that a lot of companies don't reply even when they don't have hiring freezes. You know, I hate to say it, but I wouldn't hold my breath. That doesn't mean give up hope or that sort of thing, but it means expand your search and also look for other opportunities. Again, if you fall in the category where you can't wait until everything, you know, comes to a new normal and things kind of settle down and you need something, I wouldn't hold off waiting for those companies that have hiring freezes to suddenly unfreeze. I would, however, spend some time dedicated to networking with people who work in those organizations. I would make sure that I do apply for the job if I see it online. If it's a new posting, that's a pretty good indication that they're still hiring, or they're gathering candidates for when they can fill the position. So definitely still set up your resume appropriately, customize it for the role, and still try and make inroads with your network so that you will be at the top of that consideration.
That's great, Amanda. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say really quick, the one thing I always say to people, you know, when I have a client, they call and they're so excited. They're like, I got an interview. I'm going in for this, and I think it's going to be great. I'm like, fantastic. Go find a couple more jobs to apply for. Go follow up with somebody in your network. You have to keep multiple leads. You have to work on multiple leads at one time, because the worst thing to do is assume it's going to pan out with one opportunity and get really fixated on it so that you're not necessarily keeping that momentum with the new job leads that you're finding and pursuing. Because if that doesn't work out and you don't have anything else that you've been working on, it's hard to come back when you're back down to zero. So always keep a few different leads, keep working a few different things.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And in consideration of everyone's time, I'm just going to wrap it up right now. And thank you so much for spending some extra time and addressing a couple of additional questions we have. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight and for keeping the Marist Alumni Association in your life during this very troubling and unprecedented time. I'd like to thank Amanda for spending the time with us and sharing her experience. It's super helpful, especially during this really hard time that, I mean, I've been in myself and in right now, and it's difficult, and it's nice to hear these tips that I can work towards. So a full recording of this presentation is going to be available in just a few days on the new virtual opportunities page on the Marist Alumni website. So please look out for that. And we've posted the link in the chat box on your screen. Thank you again to everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and please stay safe and well.
Thank you so much. Have a good one, everybody. Take care.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Red Fox forever.